my pleasure to welcome Jashaswi Basu. He's a PhD student here at IISER Pune, and I think he will finish soon. I hope he will finish soon. And his guide is also here, so I hope he's also listening to that. So he's going to talk to us. We all know what motors are, right? Have you heard the word motor? Where are motors used?
By cars.
Cars. Where else?
Yeah.
Hand pump or a pump. Where else?
I can use trees.
Okay. So now he is going to talk. He's going to talk about molecular motors. So tiny proteins and different molecules which work as motors inside the cell. Okay. So let's welcome Jashaswi, and what do you?
Yeah. Good afternoon to everyone. So as she said, I'm going to talk about molecular motors. So before diving into the straight science, I will just go into the busy human life schedule. All of us are very busy in our whole day with lots of day-to-day activities, from waking up in the morning to getting breakfast. Some of us who are not lucky enough, we have to travel all the way to our place of work or our place of school. We study. Sometimes we have some recess and we play. So all this busy schedule of life, it's coordinated by different living processes inside our human body system, like our system, movement and locomotion, which helps us moving and transport across spaces. Nutrition and metabolism, where we can eat fancy stuff or dietary stuff and get the proper nutrients. Respiration, oxygen, giving out carbon dioxide, getting energy. We need to get rid of our waste, excretion, and we also have to reproduce. So all these living processes, it's not just restricted to human beings, it's all across the whole world, where we see numerous animals, plants, from the flowers to the crawling insects, lizards, to fancy marine organisms like bees, to our great banyan trees, to our human body. They are all composed of, all these living processes can take place in a coordinated manner because of the different types of cells which are present in our body. I think most of the audience are aware, or if not, just to tell you, there are different types of cells in the living organism. Like in human body, we have RBCs, blood RBCs, WBCs, epithelial cells in the skin, the nerve cell, neurons, and many other more. So what exactly does the cell do? The cell are composed of a diverse number of organelles, which each individually has their own functions. Be it an animal cell or a plant cell, both are a crowded crowded machine as such, or a crowded component of living systems, which coordinates and helps us function our day-to-day activities. There are organelles like plasma membrane in the cell, which helps us take in and get rid of nutrients, waste products. We have the Golgi, our ribosomes, which helps us in protein synthesis and sorting of the proteins. We have mitochondria, which helps us energy production, the powerhouse of the cell. It's not just the power of the cell, there are many more intricate details. We have the chromosomes and the nucleus, which help us carry important genetic components, so that what our entire features can be transferred to the next generation. And all these components, all these functions, make the cell like a huge factory. In fact, we can say it's a living network of factories, multiple factories. Each organelle is like a factory itself, which are connected and coordinated to form the cell. And so with respect to, like, for example, protein synthesis, for example, our cells develop proteins, and we need to sort them out, we need to pack them up. Any luggage, like a luggage, someone packs the good we can get the luggage transferred to another place where it gets some sorted. We check them whether it's all places are intact or not. Then we go to a different office. You can see that whether the some other processes of regulation, all sorts of things. So like that, in the cell itself, a nutrient, for example, in this case, this ball, can transport from this organelle to that organelle or factory to the next, and so on. And to help the cell do these activities, the cells have machines inside them. These are the huge machines which we see in our whole, like, to quote Ramchandras thing which makes our life is easier, and for cells, molecular motors makes the life easier. But it's not just it's that it makes the life easier, work easier for the cell. There is a silencer inside the cell too, which gives much more delicate, discrete definitions of more proteins. But not to complicate much, like any machine which needs fuel to perform its activity, a molecular motor also needs chemical energy to function. These chemical energies are in the form of energy units called ATP. And so, what exactly, how can we distinguish different types of motors? Based on their movement pattern, we can classify them as either rotary or translational motors. So rotary, it will rotate like a fan, and translational, it will walk like a car, or like I'm walking now. Rotary motors, so that was just an analogy. This is what it almost looks like inside the cell. Not such nicely, but something like this. But just to give you a schematic, rotary motors, there are different types of rotary motors in our body, like the F0, F1 ATPase, which is actually present inside the mitochondria and helps us generate ATP, the energy unit of life. And we also have translational motors which help the cell to carry stuff from one organelle to another. Just to give you a brief example of two rotary motors, F0, F1 ATPase generate ATP, as I said. But how does it generate ATP? It rotates in the membrane of a mitochondria, and in that whole in this rotary activity, it can help in the formation of ATP from ADP and PI, the two components which make up ATP. There is also another enzyme. If you know remotely about DNA replication, there is DNA is entangled. It's like a huge network of threads. So to replicate the DNA, we need a helicase enzyme, which will unwind the DNA. And this helicase is in fact a rotary motor. It rotates and unwinds the DNA. As you can see in this case, the blue things are helicase enzyme. It rotates across the DNA strand and helps us to unwind the DNA. But I am a little biased towards translational motors. Let's get into more about these motors. These motors, based on the tracks, can be classified. They can have a polarity that they can walk towards one end, which we normally which we boring guys sometimes refer to as plus end or minus end. And there are different tracks which on the basis of which we can classify these motor proteins. So why do we need translational motors? As I said, we need the cell, some kind of a machine which can transport things. But why exactly? Can just go on. Why do we need a specific directed transport? So for example, if a thing is manufactured, if a protein is manufactured in the Golgi, it needs, the mitochondria needs the protein for its functioning. So it needs to be transported from there to the mitochondria. And who does this job? The translational motor. These are exactly like a person who is carrying your load and walking from organelle to organelle. Why do we need such directed force generators? So inside the cells, there are two types of transport mechanisms. we can transport things either by diffusion, passive transport, or active transport. What is the difference between the two? Passive transport is I'm just traveling from here to there. I don't have any direction. I'm just randomly walking from here to there, randomly walking, and then through this random orientation, I will finally reach my destination. But active transport is something where there is a force which will push me directly towards that podium and nowhere else. I will be moving directionally. But why do we need an active transport inside cells when we have passive transport? To actually explain you guys about passive transport, diffusion. Diffusion is passive transport. How many of you are aware of diffusion? Okay. What does the definition say?
The modification is comparative.
High concentration? Yes. So, anything can go from high concentration to low concentration. And this can help us transport things. Like the thing I just said, random directed motion, diffusion is just like, it randomly goes from a high concentration to low concentration. And like this ink diffusing along the surface, across in the this ink diffusing into the liquid, it can diffuse and make the whole liquid blue. But there are some factors which diffusion depends on. Diffusion just cannot randomly happen. There is one factor which affects diffusion rate: distance. So, for example, if I have this bottle diffusing from here to there at 3 different distances, like I'm transporting this from here to there, diffusion rate, the time it takes from diffusing from here to there will be just 1 second. But if I need the same bottle to transport from here to this place, it will take around 10 seconds. And suppose I'm transferring this whole bottle from here to the IISER gate, I will take around 10 minutes. So so as we increase the distance, for this bottle, in fact, this bottle will take different amount of time. Increasing distance will increase the time. But and one more thing which the diffusion rate depends on, it's the size of the particle. So the amount of time this bottle will take from going from here to that podium, and the amount of time this bottle will take will vary because it's a size dependence. So for example, in this case, this small globe will take 10 seconds to travel this distance. But the same distance when a globe of a larger size travels, it will take a much more higher time, 10 minutes. Even bigger blob, even greater time. So this will be a little problematic, right? So in an exam, the question is, what is the value of 2 plus 2? If your brain thinks that 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, and it takes around 100 minutes for the brain to transfer the information that 2 plus 2 equal to 4 to hand, it will, you might just need to fail your exams. Not that 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 is hard, but still, brain needs to transfer this information to the hand to proceed. So that's why, to make this function more rapid, we have active transport, force-generated transport. And who does this force-generated transport? Motor proteins. So who does this transport? Motor proteins. But as I said, like cars, motor proteins also need a track. It can't just walk around. It's a directed motion. So different motor proteins have different types of track. What are these tracks in general called? Cytoskeleton. So like our human body, we have a skeletal body structure which maintains the shape of our body. Cells also need a discrete skeleton which maintains the shape of the body, shape of the cell. Otherwise it would be just a blob of balloon. And the cytoskeleton is the one which maintains the shape of the cell, forms tracks along the cell, helping the motor proteins to transport from organelle to organelle. And they are of 3 different types: microtubule, actin, intermediate filaments. And based on the track, we can distinguish between motor proteins. So microtubules are a biopolymer. It's composed of alpha beta subunits. Too detailed, you don't have to remember that. but it's just like a chain. And each chain, and the chain is made up of different types of a molecule called alpha beta tubulin. And these can join along the surface and form a whole chain-like polymer called microtubules. And based on the growing end and the non-growing end, this is not technically non-growing, this is a slow growing end, but for your sake, let's suppose it's a non-growing end, we can actually polarize the microtubules, plus end or minus end. Minus end, slow growing end, plus end, faster growing end. And these are in fact dynamic. If you see this cell, if you see in this, it's inside the cell, these grow and shrink. These are all dynamic in nature.
I read.
And in these dynamic polymers walk two kinds of motor proteins, kinesin and dynein. Based on the direction of motion, they can be distinguished as kinesin or dynein.
So we have the choice.
So inside the cell, if the red one is the microtubule tract and the green spots are the motor proteins. So inside the cells, it really walks along the microtubules like cars, as you can say here. And in the schematic downstairs, you can see the directionality. So based on the polarity, as I said, kinesin and dynein. So kinesin walks only towards the plus end and dynein walks towards the minus end. Sometimes they meet, sometimes they fight, sometimes they are a group of friends coordinated and making the whole body function.
So there.
But how do motor proteins work? The left side is intricate detailed about how it forms ATP, ADP, PI, blah, blah, blah. These are for all of us boring people, as I said. But interestingly, it can walk either like an inchworm or hand over hand like we do as man. So it can either walk like this, or they can like an inchworm. But this walking depends on the ATP, the energy currency. When we have ATP, the kinesin can bind to the motor protein. As soon as the ATP breaks down to ADP and PI, it releases. And then it jumps up to the other track. ATP, bound. ADP, jumps. ATP, bound. So it can either be hand over hand, ATP bound, ADP up, ATP in, down, like this, or as I said, inchworm. So there has been quite some debates over how these proteins walk, but too much information, they can either walk like a human being or like an inchworm. But the interesting part is, as I said, kinesin and dynein coordinates. Individually, the kinesin or dynein can work in teams. So like teamwork, which helps us reduce the load, group studies reduces the load of our study load, exam load, and blah blah blah, office teamwork, and many more. Or like ants, kinesin and dynein can work as teams so that they can share the load among themselves and can help in the direction of motion. It can reduce time, it can increase the velocity or not, increase the force, decrease the force, and many more. The other track of cytoskeletal tract is the actin. It also polymerizes, as we saw for microtubule, different polymers, globular actin, binds to form a chain, and these are in fact more flexible than microtubules. Microtubules are very rigid, but actin are very flexible, as you can see in this case. So for the same two different kinds of polymer, there are two different kinds of polymer inside the cells. One is flexible and one is rigid, and both of them have their different properties which helps in day-to-day cellular activity. There is a motor protein which walks along actin as well, myosin, different subtypes of myosin. It walks along actin, and this walking helps in the muscle contraction. So as you can see in this, it can walk along the actin, but it's immobilized. So this walking motion makes the actin slide along them, and this sliding in fact can help in muscle contraction and relaxation. So every time you walk, there's a muscle contraction, right? The heart beats, muscle contraction. All these muscle contractions is regulated, is helped because of this actin myosin sliding movement. And like muscle contraction, there are diverse roles which molecular motors plays. From cytoplasmic streaming, where the cytoplasm inside the cell streams, to ciliary motion, beating heart, cell division, carbo transport, and many more. All these functions are in fact coordinated by the intricate system of motor proteins, microtubules, and actin. I hope it's interesting, but this is what we saw about cells. Now, as a early career scientist, I see these proteins outside the cells, not inside the cells. You can also see them inside the cells. I think I have one example of that. We can see by two ways. So, one is just a motor protein walking along the track. We get the tracks out, we get the motor protein out, we land them on a microscope slide, and we just see them walking. How do we see them walking? We can light them up. So just to give you an analogy, like at night light, you can see cars during night light from a high building, suppose, and you can see the cars walking, those cars moving around. How? By the light from the cars. So we can actually lighten up the motor proteins. Yeah, lighten up the motor proteins. And since we have a light on the motor proteins, it will be observable, and we can see the light on the motor proteins. From the light moving, we can know that the motor proteins is itself walking. So this is how we can track the motor proteins. Like this, like this, and yeah. See different kinds of light moving around the tracks, red tracks. That video, that screen has a better view if you just want to see.
Answer. Yeah. It's fine.
We can also see it in a different configuration. How? We make the motors static. We fix them. We don't let them walk. But motors, we fix them on glass. Motors walk. Does motors walk on glass? Should they walk? Yeah. So they don't walk on the glass. They're fixed on the glass. But they can walk on microtubules. So if we put in microtubules, they will walk on the glass. So imagine a concert. Random singer jumps to the crowd. The crowd helps him transport. Just like that, the motor proteins help the microtubules glide. And this we can actually see them like this. Here we lighten up the microtubules. And we can actually see them moving and circling and twirling and many more kinds of patterns and many things. In fact, interestingly, we can see them forming many such patterns. All these kinds of microscopic movies where we can see them and we can track them, we can study them, and many more things. Yeah. So just to take some take-home messages, cells are responsible for regulating living processes. We know they are composed of different organelles. We know we need machines inside the cells which help the cells perform properly, and these are called molecular motors or motor proteins. They can be translational motors or rotational motors, and they can regulate a large number of cellular processes. I will end my talk with a nice video from Hogan-Grud's lab where they have discussed the life of a day in the life of motor protein.
Our brain is made of billions of nerve cells, and they're all connected. If we take a closer look, a nerve cell seems to have antennas. Most of them are receivers of information, but only one is a transmitter, called the axon. This axon is connected to several receivers of other cells, forming a gigantic neural network, the brain. Meet John. John is a kinesin, a motor protein. He lives inside a nerve cell, and he has a proper job. To ensure that a brain cell does his job properly, it knows the continuous flow of building materials, proteins. They travel through the cell using the cytoskeleton. If you would compare a nerve cell with a city, the cytoskeleton inside the cell would be the roads, and the traveling proteins would be the traffic. These materials are towed by motors along the roads. And just as in real life, there are different kinds of motors and different kinds of roads. John's sole purpose in life is to deliver his cargo to a specific place in the axon. He takes the main roads, and he walks in just one direction only. John's job may seem easy, but it's not. He has to overcome a number of obstacles to ensure that the right amount of cargo arrives at the right place. To make the journey even more difficult, John is not alone. Other motor proteins ride along with his cargo. They haven't woken up yet, but that will happen soon. The journey starts in the center of the city, just like in the center of the cell. To enter the axon, John has to pass a place called the axon initial segment. In this segment, there are two kinds of roads. The main roads that John uses, called the microtubules, and a lot of little alleys called actin. And here, our brave motor protein meets his first challenge, because one of his sleeping travel companions, myosin, has woken up and starts to cling to the actin. And there are a lot of alleys. Only brute force can save John now. Fate strikes again. The other companion, Diamond, wakes up, and he can only walk in the opposite direction of John, resulting in a tug of war. But there can be only one. Along the axon in which John travels, there are places called synapses. Here, the axon connects to receivers of the other cells. Regulating proteins call the shots here. This traffic police makes sure that all passing traffic gets to the right destination. If John's cargo is needed in this synapse, he will be stopped and myosins take over his load. But today, John's cargo is safe. But what he does not know, that his road is under construction, just a few blocks away. In our nerve cells, the cytoskeleton is changing constantly. Roads are built, but are also broken down. Facing this kind of obstruction, John has to find a detour. John isn't the only motor protein on the road. There are many more. Our nerve cells need a smooth traffic flow in order to perform well. A traffic jam due to problems during the journey may ultimately result in brain disease. Understanding the challenges John faces could improve treatment or prevention. Finally, John arrives at his destination. He has fulfilled his destiny. But several other Johns are just getting started.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any questions for him, we can take a few questions. अगर आपको कुछ सवाल पूछना है, जो नया है उनको कुछ अलग समझा रहेगा, और जो पहले से बैठे हुए हैं, we'll take like 1 or 2 questions before we start with the next topic. कुछ भी क्वेश्चन हो सकता है, कितना भी सिंपल हो सकता है. He'll obviously try to simplify and give you the answer.
Application of this is applications for this question now.
What are the applications of this risk?
Okay, so
Like it.
different, as I said, different processes are regulated by the motor proteins. To give an example, like the video said, in the axons, if we have a lot of waste in the axon, they can they can cause different types of diseases, Alzheimer's, for example. So what the motor proteins help is, just to give an application of this, it helps to reduce the waste. It will take the waste from the place it's producing, transport it, and take it to the plasma membrane, where it will just throw them out of the cell. And since we have the motor proteins functioning, which reduces the disposal service. So like I said, if we don't have a waste disposal in our city, the city will be filled up with waste. Like the same thing happens inside the cells. If inside the cells we have a deposit of waste, it will cause various types of diseases. The motor proteins help to reduce this disposal. It's a waste disposal service in that case, and helps reduce the waste and reduce the propensity of having this disease. And there are many other examples. Cell division, it helps in cell division. If any of the motor proteins are affected, it can cause cell division problems and can lead to cancers. There are lots of diseases, many factors which the motor proteins help in the cell function. And in fact, I didn't put it up in the slide. The motor proteins, there are some labs which are trying to make artificial motor proteins, nano cars they are calling that, which we can have them inside the cell, and they can actually help in many things like drug delivery, waste disposal, some things like that. So a lot of
Which one's there?
What's it?
Sir, so there were so many parallels between the actual world and the cellular world. So is there any way we can come up to solutions which we are facing in the real world, like maybe traffic jams or something, by studying the processes that go at the cellular levels?
we can. There are lots of smarter and maybe boring people working on them. They're trying to solve maths equations, trying to do many things where they can actually implicate some of the traffic patterns which we see in a cell in our traffic environment. But human beings are not that coordinated like they are inside the cells. So it is difficult to implement all of them, but there are studies which are trying to see that.
I have explained.
Is there?
Is there any similarities between electrical motor and molecular motor?
See, molecular motors, yes, it's like I said, electrical motors needs some energy to perform some activity. Like that, molecular motors needs it's essential an engine inside the cell, which needs fuel, which needs everything, which the functionalities may differ, but the role may be different, but the function, how it works, it's almost the same. There are many more intricate details inside the cells which happens, and there are many more intricate details inside the electrical cells, electrical appliances which happens. Some are different, some are similar, both. Just to name pumps, for example, or a fan, it needs a rotary motion. So the engine is the same. So it rotates the blade. Fans rotates the blade, but the job of the fan is to give us wind and air. But the job of the rotary motors, which is I said there, it's to unwind the DNA. The job may be different. The functioning are almost this. How it behaves, it's the same, but different intricate details.
Okay. Thank you for the talk. So just one. There's one question we shouldn't leave anyone with a curiosity.
Yeah, sure.
So if these molecular motors have kind of stopped working or not working at the pace they are supposed to, so it may result into some kind of different kind of diseases based upon what molecular motor is not working. So
Yeah.
is there a way that we have, like scientists have discovered, to give some stimulus to the motor so that they can at least wake up early and start working the way they are supposed to?
Yes, we can introduce chemicals which can enhance the activity of the motor proteins and to reduce the reduce their effect. They can reduce their not working activity to help them function the roles they are supposed to, which can enhance the motor proteins. Yes. So, for example, just to give you an example, there are several medicines which are given to the myosin, which helps in the for example, in a heart patient, if you have the myosins are degraded or not working properly, they can lead to heart diseases like heart attack, for example, no contraction at heart diseases. So there are some medicines which can actually bind to the myosin and help in the muscle contraction and help perform the heart more properly, reducing the effect of heart.
Thank you, Jashaswi, for the talk.